Story 1. A Ghost Named Demon. One night me and my co-workers decided to play with a Ouija board outside of work. We talked to a girl named Quinn who said she was a demon. She seemed pretty cool till towards the end of taking to her we decided we needed to head home because it was like 2 a.m., but she wouldn't let us say goodbye until we promised that if we ever used the Ouija board again that we would talk to her. About a week later the place where we worked caught on fire. So a few days after that we go to the lake and use the Ouija board again and asked for Quinn. We asked if she started the fire and she told us that she did. Then it seemed like Quinn got scared or overpowered because the board started acting up, spelled Zozo and started counting backwards. We quickly said goodbye and moved the planchette to goodbye. About 2 weeks later I was driving to my friend's house. I should mention that the friend was a girl I was seeing at the time and she was cheating and using me. I did not know this at the time. I guess Quinn knew because she seemed mad, protecting and jealous when me and my friends mentioned this girl's name the first time we used the Ouija board. So on the way to her house I hydroplaned and flipped my truck. I have to add the Ouija board is in the truck. Some people driving down the road stopped to help get the door open and I climbed up and out. When the cops arrived they made sure I was okay and said they had to write me a ticket just because of the accident. I don't have the ticket anymore because this happened about 4 years ago, but the address site of the accident was Route 666 Virginia. Story 2. The old woman predicted my aunt's future. I have never dabbled in anything besides homemade tarot cards, but my aunt did. She was known for always being very reckless and carefree. When she was about 15, she was left home alone, and decided that she wanted to try an Ouija board. Whenever she's been asked why, she just tells us that she's always been curious and wanted to know if it really worked. She had to wait to be alone because my grandfather didn't allow for my aunt to dabble in practices that could go dark, with good reason. However, when they left her home alone, she decided to try it. They didn't have an Ouija board, since my grandfather would never allow it, so instead she crafted one out of wood and a Sharpie. I know most of you are thinking that there's no way that would work, but there have been many cases where it has. If you provide spiritual or demonic entities with a medium you contact you with, it doesn't matter what it is. By touching the makeshift wooden planchet, with the intent of summoning something, my aunt granted whatever entity access to communicate with her, and potentially attach itself to her. Unfortunately, that is what happened. The Ouija board ended up working, much to my aunt's initial delight, and she got in contact with the spirit of an old woman. The woman told her that she could predict the future, so of course my aunt asked her questions such as, "What will I study in university? Where will I be in 20 years? And, how will I die?" My aunt was skeptic of this woman's abilities but knew that she shouldn't ask about her death date. Even if the woman couldn't, the date would still be in my aunt's mind and most likely plague her thoughts. Anyways, the board answered English, Canada, and the same as your mother eventually will, breast cancer. My aunt at the time thought all of these were ludicrous since she has always wanted to study the sciences in university, was from India and intended to stay there, and at the time, my grandma hadn't gotten cancer yet. So, my aunt, being the ballsy and stupid kid she was, taunted the entity about her disbelief and asked the entity to prove it. So, the entity told her that my grandfather would be home 1 hour earlier than planned and catch her with the board. She didn't believe the entity, of course, and continued to taunt it. This, in turn, angered it and resulted in becoming hostile towards my aunt. My aunt started experiencing cuts forming on her arms, and they continued to travel up. She screamed and threw the planchette, right when my grandfather walked in, and caught her in the act. Saying he was fuming was apparently an understatement. My grandfather, being very spiritual, closed the board properly by saying goodbye, and immediately had a priest come bless the house. Afterwards, my aunt, of course, was in a lot of trouble. She tried to show my uncle the cuts received on her arms, only for them to have disappeared. The pain was still there, without any of the physical scarring. It's safe to say my aunt was petrified. The worst part? My aunt went to university to study English. After getting her bachelor's, the whole family immigrated to Canada as my grandfather's visa finally got approved. He was planning this for ages, but the visa took over a decade to be approved. Finally, my grandma has gotten breast cancer twice, and while she hasn't passed away yet, her time is approaching. My aunt is absolutely petrified and tells all of us this story to ensure we never dabble in any of these spiritual objects. I, myself, am quite the skeptic of all things spiritual and demonic in nature. I'm an atheist, ex-theist, but wonder if there is any plausibility to this, because I can't deny that my aunt is always petrified at the mention of any of these objects. She is not the type to be frightened easily of anything, so it does make me question whether this is real. Story 3. Not just a game. So, I played this game years ago when I was about 14 years old. My best friend, at the time, Melissa, and I decided to play the board. We lit some candles and proceeded to play. We put our fingers lightly on the planchette and asked, "Is someone there?" It replied, "Yes." We then asked, "What is your name?" It replied, "Janae." We then asked, "What do you want?" It started to write, CHE, then slowly made its way to L. At this point I noticed it was starting to spell out my name. From the L, the planchette began to go towards the S. I threw my hands up and started to cry. I 110% trusted Melissa. This girl was my best friend. My ride or die. But I was so scared at this point I had to ask Melissa, "Did you move it?" She promised me she wasn't moving it. I believed her then, and I still believe her. So after I call my mom. My mom is super religious. She calmed me down and said a prayer. My mom then said my sister wanted to talk to me. So I get on the phone with my sister. She heard me talking to my mom and wanted to talk to me about her experience playing the game. My sister then began to tell me how she was also contacted by Gina when she played years before me. My sister then asked if I had talked to my oldest sister yet about this. I had not. She told me to call my oldest sister and talk to her about this. So I did. My oldest sister had played this game before both me and my other sister had played. She too was contacted by a little girl named Gina. However, my oldest sister actually stayed and talked to Gina when she had played with this game. My sister then told me how Gina had passed away. Gina had a very similar childhood to my sisters and me. I won't go into detail about hers or our childhood, but it wasn't the best. The fact that my sisters and I all played the game on different occasions, all with different people, and were contacted by the same person makes me know that this is not just a game. Since that day, I have never and will never play the Ouija board. I know it is made by Milton Bradley and they are a game company. However, in my experience, the Ouija board is not a game. It is not something to be played with. If you are reading this and have not touched the Ouija board, don't. Please, do yourself the favor and don't. Story 4. Ouija board experience at school 2016, Texas. So me, 11 that time, and my brother and his friends that were a bit older than me told me to go inside of their teacher's classroom to do an Ouija board session. So I really didn't think much of it because I didn't know what it was and what it did. So I put my hand on it and asked if it was a boy or a girl. It moved to G, so I assumed girl. I asked if it came to haunt one of us, and it spelled out my name. I was very shocked since I didn't tell my name at all. My nose suddenly started to nosebleed, though I had never had a nosebleed in my life. I ran to the bathroom and took care of it when I looked up into the mirror and saw a small little girl behind me. I wanted to do a poker face. I swiftly looked behind me and saw Noon was there. I was mostly frightened since I saw the girl and concluded that I was in fact being followed by a ghost of a girl or a man in a suit. I feel like I am being watched even when I am taking a shower with just me inside the bathroom. I'll tell you about my shower story when I wake up after a night's slumber. Story 5. I'm being watched. When I was about 15, my friend was talking about an Ouija board and saying how it worked. I'll call her friend 1. I didn't think that shit like that existed. I heard stories and stuff, but I wasn't fully convinced. Even though my whole life I was told not to mess with one by my religious family members, I didn't believe and I was curious, so I suggested that we try one. One night it ended up happening. I was with friend 1 and friend 2. I was so nervous that it would actually work. It was around 2 in the morning. We were in my dining room, which was basically just an extra room we didn't use. We had a dim light that dangled above the table. All 3 of us put our fingers on it and asked if anyone was there. It slowly started to move towards yes. Friend 2 took her finger off because she was scared, which kinda made me scared since she broke the rules, but I also thought it was all just a bunch of BS. We all asked each other, "Did you move it?" All of us said no. I felt chills go down my spine. We put our fingers on and kept playing. We asked it what its name was and it said that it was friend 1's dead mom. We all looked at each other. We asked how old it was and it said the age my friend's mom would be. We figured it was just a spirit pretending to be her mom, because that's what they do when they want to get out, right? Then we just kept asking it questions that it wouldn't know, like how tall is this person? What color is this person's hair? How old is this person? It got every single one right. We started to get really freaked out, so we stopped. We said goodbye, but I'm not sure if it did. Every now and then my 3 friends would play it. It was never all 4 of us. Just me and 2 other friends, but they would alternate. It said some other really weird things. One time we were talking to a spirit and we asked what its name was, and it was just a bunch of jumbled letters. I don't know what that means. Anyway, after a while we stopped doing it. But after we did it, weird shit started happening at my house, like in the kitchen, which is right by the dining room. You would be in the fridge or something and you could hear freshly washed silverware clinking together even though no one was in there. Then me and a friend were trying to go to sleep. It was around 3 a.m. It was dead silent then. We both hear a loud noise and look at each other because we can't distinguish what it is. It sounded like something dragging, then it clicked. I knew exactly what it was. It was the dining room table. I knew because I moved it before, so I knew the sound it made. It was very distinct. It was a wooden table on tile floor, so it made this really loud bumpy sound. Anyway, no one was in there when it happened. My mom was on the opposite side of the house. Our dogs were with us, so the only thing it could have been was a cat, and I don't think a cat could move this table. It was hard to move. And that happened twice. So yeah, that really freaked me out. I started to feel like I was being watched and shit. I know one of my friends felt the same way. I woke up once to someone whispering my name in the middle of the night. I thought it was my mom trying to wake me up, so I went to her room. But she was sleeping, so I woke her up and asked if she was trying to wake me up, and she said no. I had her walk me back to my room so I could turn on my lights on because I was so scared. I don't know, it was just a crazy experience. Does anyone have any feedback or explanations?